One, go. Well, hello, folks. Back with Six Elementals. It's P.L. Stewart, author of John King Saga. Tonight, my time, and my wonderful guest time. We are here with a brilliant author, someone who does some really unique stuff in this space. This is, some of the stuff that Adam does is like cutting edge, really avant garde, and yeah, I'm going to embarrass him here, but he has actually published, in my opinion, I'm not exaggerating, one of the most consequential books in the indie science fiction fantasy space, but not for the reasons you think, right? This isn't the newest book about dragons flying through the, well, I guess in a way it kind of is, but it's not about the story. It's about what it can provide for authors as a guide and a tool. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about his fabulous books as well, his fiction books, right? But tonight, welcome Adam Bassett. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for that ridiculously flattering intro. As I am in my father's office and just coming down from a cold and not with my usual setup, but I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm excited to chat about all this stuff and share what's going on with people.
Well, I'm so happy that you've joined us. I'm so honored. Thank you so much. You're someone I admire. Obviously, you've done a lot in this space. You're relatively young, but you've done a lot. You've had a lot on the go. Um, Perhaps you can talk to us about first. What's your background in writing? How did your love of writing start? Your love of writing, and I'm assuming reading. When did you start writing? How did that all come together for you?
Yeah, so the short version is basically I have enjoyed reading and writing ever since I was very young. I started reading at the age of like 4 or something. And like if you want to go all the way back, that's where we can begin. But I began writing what was essentially, and I didn't know this at the time, but I was essentially the first thing I was writing was fan fiction of the books I was reading at the time, and then that gradually transformed into wanting to do something more original and my own. And it took a long time to kind of learn how to do that and like separate the things that I was interested in from the things that I was already reading or watching or playing or whatever it was. Um, it took a lot of failed attempts and trying to understand even what I was interested in. Um, and I think maybe you can, like, anyone who's familiar with my work can maybe see some of that because it's like, yeah, I love dragons, but I haven't included a normal dragon in any of my books yet. Because the thing that I enjoy is kind of like taking that thing that I like and adjusting it a little bit, making it fit into this different space that maybe you wouldn't expect to find it in. Those kinds of things bring me a lot of joy. Um, and yeah, I over the years just kind of continued to hone my craft and try to learn what I could. I read a lot of writing blogs and I read a lot of books, and that would come and go throughout the years. There were some periods where I didn't write anything, other years where I was really really invested in it. Just the way it goes. My first like big push into really trying to do something was back around 2014, 2015, as I was leaving college. Um, and I wrote a short story collection that was like kind of leaning sci-fi. And um, that found a hybrid publisher. And that experience taught me a lot about uh, just the publishing world. And as much as I don't regret that experience, I also don't think it was something that I want to repeat. And that knowledge, of course, leads me into, well, I still want to be part of this world and part of publishing and writing and share my work with people. but how else do I go about that? And like, what do I take from that experience and move forward? And I started self-publishing stuff back in 2024. I made a really hard push to try and get something out there and become a part of the community. And I made a real effort to, before anything came out, um, I joined book review groups and I tried to find other people on social media that were kind of in this space as well. And not like, because that was one of the problems with my initial attempt was I didn't have any of those connections. I didn't have a social media account set up anywhere. I didn't know what to do basically. And to have those connections this time and like um as I was getting into things, Adrian M. Gibson was releasing Mushroom Blues. And I saw how well that went, and it was his debut. And I was like, Adrian, can we just like talk for a bit? And you can just tell me what you did, what you would do again, what you wouldn't do again, all those things. And I feel like to him, he didn't say anything particularly revolutionary. But to me, not knowing so many things and maybe suspecting some things, but not having that validation from anyone yet,
Yeah.
that conversation was just so helpful to me to be like, okay, this is achievable and this is a space that I can do something with. Um, Long story short, I know I'm kind of rambling here a little bit,
No, no, no.
but the long and short of it is I pursued self-publishing. I have tried with every book to be as thorough as I could so that I am proud of what I'm putting out because obviously I don't have that agent or publisher telling me like, yeah, we validate this book is like worth people's time. I don't have that. So like I'm always very anxious of like I never want to put something out there that is not worth people's time or that I won't be happy with. And so, to the extent that I can with each project, I get a bunch of editors and beta readers and really try and like put it through its paces before I share it. And I've been able to do that somehow. I've been able to do that. This will be the fourth time with an author's guide to setting design. Will be the fourth self-published book I release. I'm working on the fifth. I have two series running, one of which is a series of standalone cyberpunk books, and the other is a series of post-apocalyptic fantasy books. I'm just having a great time, honestly. Like I really I've always enjoyed writing, and being a part of the community has been so motivating for me. Um, and I actually just got news the other day that I'm going to be able to go to Dragonsteel this year and actually be with everybody and see all these people in person for the first time, and see some of the people that contributed to this book. Like, we'll talk about this later, I'm sure, but PL contributed to this book. I'm also at Dragonsteel going to be able to see Isaac Stewart, who is Brandon Sanderson's map designer, who contributed to the book as well and gave me a bunch of awesome like interview answers that I was able to work in. And Adrian also is going to be there. He helped with the book. Like there's just so many people involved, and I love the community so much. It's been so fun to be a part of, and it's really reignited my love for reading and writing. And it's good to be here.
Well, that is just awesome. It's so great to hear. You said so many things that I'd love to touch on. I mean, among them, Adrian Gibson, obviously great,
Mm.
smart, uber talented
I feel like
person.
he keeps coming up in people's origin stories.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
he's amazing.
yeah, I was talking with Michael Vadney and like hearing about his origin story as he's just recently released his debut, and he's like, "Yeah, I talked with Adrian, and he kind of walked me through these things," and I'm like, "Yeah, I can relate."
Yeah, yeah, great person to know. Obviously now taking on even bigger roles with Grimdark Magazine, etc. Yeah, just a wonderful person. Check out my Six Elemental interviews with Adrian. He's been on the channel a few times, including promoting his anthologies, Book of Spores, and things like that. So yeah, Adrian, just a wonderful an integral person, I believe, to our community, especially as a mentor or a guide and things like that. And all he does in the blogging and podcast sphere. It's funny you talked about community because I've been speaking a lot. I was on Philip Chase's channel maybe a couple weeks ago, and recently with Cole Crookie on his channel, talking about that specifically about building a community as an author and the value and importance of that, and why it transcends most of your actual goals. Like, what will keep you rejuvenated and happy? Yes, sales is marvelous. We all want to sell more books, and we all want to, but what's really going to keep you happy, in a good mental place, motivated, is being feeling I think part of you're part of the writing community, and you're immersed, and you're someone who is giving back and receiving, and you're just part of this mix. I think that's what is for longevity in writing. I think that's really integral, and I'm so happy that you found it. And I can't emphasize enough what you said is so important, that you achieved, right. You got the hybrid publishing deal, and you were there, right. What so many people strive for, but ironically and sadly, and I'm sorry that happened, but it sounds you certainly come back and rebounded, and doing so well that despite that success on paper, you didn't feel that the experience was the be all and end all, because you weren't part of a community. So even that brass ring, okay, I'm going to be published. I'm going to be I got a book deal. Like, someone was validating me, as you said, without being part of a community. Somehow, in your case, and in the case of many authors, it can potentially be not as positive as it could be. I don't want to say it rings hollow, because it's still a huge accomplishment, and congratulations to you for getting there. But I think you seem much more happy and content being an indie author now, and being a part of a community bigger than what venue you're publishing in. Being part of the community is what's really driving you, right? And that's great to hear.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not writing off trad publishing in the future. I wouldn't even consider what I went through as like a trad publishing pipeline. It was very much like uh, it was like paying for a service, and they handled a lot of the stuff for me. Um, and I think there is definitely situations in which that can work for people, but for myself at the time, especially with like no audience, no community, no way to market this stuff really, no money to market it certainly, it just kind of fell flat, which in retrospect makes complete sense. And it also was such a good learning experience of like, what are the steps to take from a book from a manuscript to publication. I learned a lot from it, and I genuinely mean it when I say I don't regret what I did, but it's also like I've also learned that doesn't work for me at this point in time, and that's part of why I've gone indie, is to have more control over things and to do the things that I'm interested in, and to build up a backlog so that maybe one day later I can show a publisher, yes, I can do these things. So that's kind of the, I don't know if that's the plan necessarily, but like that's kind of always in the back burner of like, I'm doing the thing that I want to do right now, and then we'll see what happens next.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a great approach. I think that's a great way to look at it. Our careers, especially as indies, being entrepreneurs, it can take many different directions and forms, and a lot of things are hit and miss. You can plan to be strategic, of course, and that's important, I think. But sometimes you just, okay, this isn't working, you pivot and you try something else, or some great new opportunity comes along, you get involved in that, and
Yep.
it just, the industry is changing and evolving so quickly. It's hard to keep up with all of the things that are going on, and it's hard to make choices and smart business decisions, because in a really fast moving, ever evolving industry, where do I want to spend my time? Where do I want to spend my money? What do I want to write? How often do I want to write it? When do I want to write it? Do I invest in ads? Do I not? Do I have more heavily social media? There's so many avenues and a lot often questions and things that can be wonderful and exciting, but very challenging that
Mm.
you have to cope with as an indie author. But clearly you're succeeding, and I'm very happy for you. So you mentioned a bit about. I want to get into all of your work, but you also have been part of, and I talked about all the choices and the things you can do and all the new exciting opportunities and cutting edge stuff. You've also been involved in something called Campfire. What is that?
Yeah, so Campfire was a project that I worked on for about 5-ish years. It's a place where you can go and write your book, to plan your stories, to do all your world building. You can publish work there. You can go to the blog and learn. We have a whole bunch, or they have a whole bunch of different writing topics that have been discussed there and everything. I am not part of the team anymore, but they are still going strong. There's a bunch of updates that they have coming out that I'm aware of. I designed a lot of those updates that they're still rolling out. But it was a super fun project to be a part of. I really enjoyed being on the team and having us being a part of something that was like helping other authors write their books and everything. Like, that was a really cool thing to be able to do.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for being part of something that helps. I mean, indies, we're always looking for, I think, assistance and guidance and new places to explore in the space, from both a business level and a writing, a creative level. Because again, part of being indie is doing things differently, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about and as you said, the traditional publishing path is great for some people, and it works out extremely well for some people, and of course, that's the nominal typical path that a lot of authors are aspiring to. But I think the game has changed, and indie is it is again cutting edge. It is becoming more and more popular, more and more financially more possible from a fiscal standpoint
Mhm.
than ever before. And indies are doing some amazing things out there, and Campfire sounds like that's one of them. So let's talk a bit about the books. So you mentioned, and well, if it's okay, we'll stick with the fiction initially. So we know about some of your. You mentioned your books. So Digital Extremity series
Mhm.
and the Copper and Ash series. Can you talk a bit about those series in a bit more depth?
Yeah, so Digital Extremities was what I did when I was trying to get into the indie scene. I had been previously working on a fantasy book, which was really just not coming together in a way that I liked. I had written and rewritten it so many times, and I'm sure everybody who's listening has uh, encountered something like that, where it's like, these things are just not coming together in the way that I want them to, in the way they're in my head. Um, I ended up just putting that project aside because I realized it had gotten to a point where it's like, this is not going anywhere right now. I can come back to it later if I want to. I need to just kind of prove to myself that again, that I can finish something and that I can be happy with like a completed piece of work of mine. And I had been toying with the idea of, because I grew up in rural places. I'm from northern New York, like the Adirondacks, basically.
Yeah,
Um,
beautiful area.
and I have been toying with this idea of, like, what if we set a cyberpunk world in those places, in rural and remote places like that? Um, and so that's what the collection Digital Extremities came from, was a couple of ideas that I'd kind of been toying around with that. And then once I decided that would be my next big project, it became a full collection. And I sort of uh, found other stories in that same world that I could tell. The collection spans across different countries around the world. It touches on different problems that people are having, but by and large, I describe it as slice of life cyberpunk, because it's about regular people in that world. They're not taking down the big AI construct. They're not going after the big mega corporation or changing the world in any way. They're just trying to get through the day. They're trying to help out their family. They're trying to find a missing person. Like it's all very personal stakes. Um, then as I was finishing that up, my editor pointed at something in the last story and he was like, "Oh, I want to see what happens with this. Like, where does this thing go?" And that's what ended up becoming book number two, which was Animus Paradox. Was like a full exploration of that, like throwaway couple of characters and a couple of lines here and there. That was more traditional cyberpunk thriller. I've had it described as like John Wick or Mission Impossible kind of situation. So if you're looking for action, that is the one to get. And it sort of set in motion this plan that I have now with the series of releasing each one as a standalone. So if you read them all, you will see some characters that appear in both, or some common names or mentions or something. But you can enter into the series at any point and read them in any order, and you will be fine. That is partially a strategy from me, like business strategy, so that people can pick the thing that they're interested in and go from there. Like there are people who really like the idea of cyberpunk slice of life, and they start there, and sometimes they end there, and that's okay. And there are other people who don't care about that and just want the action, and so they just pick up book two, and that's fine too, because it starts in a place and in a way that you are introduced to everybody all over again, and there's nothing in there that like requires the prior book to be read or anything. And that's kind of my plan for the whole series, is to approach it in that way, to allow people to jump in and out wherever they want. And it also allows me to kind of explore that world in a new way every single time, where I'm not digging in as deep to one particular story, but I'm getting to explore different parts of the world and different problems within it that might occur just in these places sort of on the fringes of this cyberpunk society. So that's Digital Extremities. Copper and Ash is the new one. That one was inspired actually by music by Tautu Metas. They're a Latvian ethno-pop group. And yeah, I know. Anybody who watches Eurovision will know what I'm talking about. Or I guess any Latvians in here. But that's where it started, but it definitely became its own thing. Inspired a lot by the themes and tropes in things like Annihilation and Under the Dome, Jeff Vandermeer and Stephen King. There are some like video games and stuff like Destiny comes to mind, of like this final city that is safe and secure and protected, and then this like vast wilderness that is very dangerous and all that kind of stuff. So all of those ideas kind of coalesce, and the first book was intended to be a novella, and like so many of my works, it kind of expanded beyond that, and it tells a story of these three siblings, in particular these two sisters, who all things considered are going well during this post-apocalyptic period, but there are some problems that arise in their small town, and they kind of have to escape that and then find a way back home. And that's the extent of the first story. But the more that I've thought about it, the more that I've heard feedback from readers, there's more to explore in that world. And I can't say too much more yet because I have not officially announced anything. But book two is in the works. I just got it back from my editor, and I'm working through all the revisions right now. And it's going to take things in a much different direction. I think it's going to be much different than readers are expecting. But I'm really excited to tell them about that, because there's going to be some really interesting revelations, and I, as an author, am doing things that I've never done before, as well, which is very nervous, but it's also very exciting.
Okay, well, that sounds fantastic. Looking forward to getting to those. I haven't yet, but definitely on my
Oh,
TBR. So really unique, some kind of eclectic aspects there that sound really interesting. That
yeah, I'm kind of just following whatever is interesting to me at the time, and just seeing what happens with it. Like very clearly, I'm not going into these series with like big, grand series intentions, but I'm happy to explore them when they make themselves clear. And with both of them, that has been very much the case. Of like, there's so much to explore in the fringes of this cyberpunk world. There is so much to explore in this post-apocalyptic fantasy world, and the magic systems that are in there, and the relationships between these people. And it's been fun to explore all that stuff. And I've been very fortunate to have readers embrace it for what it is. Um, I occasionally the I'm starting at this point to get reviews from people that I did not know had the book or don't recognize at all. Which, a year ago was not the case. A year ago, it was like, oh, I recognize that person from this specific event that I held, or this arc thing that went out, and like nothing was a surprise back then. Now it's like, oh, I'm starting to like find new people, which is really exciting.
that's awesome, and that sounds fabulous. And I think we always talk about the difference between gardeners and people who don't are spontaneous and have
Mhm.
the freedom to not necessarily be bound by anything, don't necessarily plan things to the degree which every little book in a series is laid out, or they even know how many books are going to be in a series, or it's going to be a duology, or what. Like, those are all fabulous things. Like, because it just allows you so much freedom, and it's exciting.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, it's these are interesting. I'm a notorious plotter. I'm on the other end. I plan everything out, but I love.
I fall somewhere in the middle. I've gotten a lot better about planning the actual story. It's what comes after
Yeah,
that I kind of leave up for later. So like sort of because of that, every book I view as a complete story. Like I don't think anyone is ever going to get to the end of my books and be like, "Oh, well, that was a cliffhanger."
yeah,
Like that just doesn't exist right now. Um, but things I tend to leave things open enough where it's like if I want to go back and dig into this more, I can, which has been a really fun way of doing things, and just sort of like the business side of it as well. It's made it really easy to pitch it to people once I like can actually sit down and talk to them, because it's I know we love big series, but it's also hard to commit to a new author who has a big series, as I'm sure you've experienced here and there. It just like the time commitment and everything of it, and to be able to say like, yeah, all of my books are at the moment very short. They're like less than 300 pages. You can listen to them on audio, every single one of them so far. Um, and you can jump in wherever you want, see if you like it, and if you want more, there is more, or there will be more. That is going to change as we move forward with the book we're going to talk about some more next, and also the sequel to this fantasy book. But at the moment, that has been like a really handy way of talking to people, getting them in the door and interested, and sort of letting them pick whatever is just most interesting to them.
yeah. That sounds incredible. So let me. You said the book we're going to talk about next. Let's let you lead with that, and delve right in and start telling the audience about that.
Sure. So my fourth book is coming out in ebook only on Tuesday. An author's guide to setting design. It is. Oh gosh, it is. I haven't got the pitch nailed down for this yet, so we're gonna just work with what we got. It is a nonfiction reference guide about earth science and like hydrology and climate. It digs into history and flora and fauna and a bunch of stuff like that. And then the final third of it is all like practical map design advice. If you want to make your own maps for science fiction, fantasy, horror, whatever you're doing, um, it talks about like what types of maps would you maybe want to do. Do you want that classic Tolkien-esque map, or maybe for your story a roadmap makes more sense? I know for Animus Paradox I put a map of central Italy in there because that's where it takes place, and the kind of map that those characters would have access to is a road map, so that's what I did. um, then of course for Copper Skin Oak and Lungs, that is a fantasy story. It's more that Tolkien-esque general reference map showing a couple of key locations in the old town. I'm a big believer in like the map should kind of fit the form of whatever the story is doing. I'm a illustrator of maps for other authors as well. My website has a portfolio full of a whole bunch of things you can check out. The reason I mentioned that is because I was working with a client maybe a year or two ago at this point, Robin Dabney, and she was working on her second book, Finding Ramanata, and that story has an important ascent up a mountain. There's a lot of like mountaineers in the story, and she was like, "We're gonna have the main map, and we're gonna have a close up of this mountain range." And we were talking about it some more in the events of the story, and I was like, "Robin, do you need that close up, or does something else make sense?" And like we ended up deciding on a trail map of that mountain, of the path that the characters take, which took us a little bit longer to do because she was not prepared to give me that information, and kind of had to like I think go back through the book and like make sure that she had all of the major locations labeled and all of that stuff. But and then it ended up being a really fun map to illustrate and a really unique thing to include in her book. It's I don't know to what extent it does, but it's one of those things also in the back of my head as an indie author marketing my own stuff as well. I'm like, this is a unique thing that you can show in your marketing that like very few other people have trail maps in their fantasy book. That just is not a thing that I've seen very much of. So like, and it extends to like if you've got a nautical story, do a nautical chart for your map,
Yeah.
or like in the book I make a case like I'm never going to write this. I don't know what I would do with it, but I really think we need like zip code maps in our cozy fantasy, and have like a story of like your main character is a dragon rider who's delivering mail or something. Like that would be so cool. So there's so many ways to have a map accent or embellish the story, I think. Ways in which you can connect it to the characters in the story. And even if you're not making a map, there are a lot of things we can learn through the context of a map, or of a place, and how it impacts the story. Understanding basic plate tectonics, for example, is getting you part way to understanding the magic system in the Broken Earth series.
Yeah.
Like that is a core part of it, and there's just so many like as somebody who's really interested in map design and in world building, um, I just I found that, and this actually goes all the way back to Campfire in like 2022 or so. I had been writing some blog articles for them about this stuff, and when that ended, I was like, "Oh, I think I have more to say actually." And so that's sort of when this book began. Was after I finished those blog articles and still wanting to explore more and learn more about all this. And what really, I think, pushed the book over the line and really is part of one of the most proud things I have of it is being able to reach out to other authors and artists and talk about this stuff with them and how they approach these things. For example, when I approached UPL, you and I talked about your maps and how people move around them, and how the different seasons can affect the way people conduct combat or avoid it. How the inspirations of Atlantis inspired some of your maps and everything, and the places they go. Actually, I don't know if I've told you this yet. Because of our conversations about Atlantis, I added a whole section to the book. There is a whole section on like lost worlds and Atlantis
Oh wow, I
that was
didn't know that.
entirely inspired by our conversation.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, that makes me feel really good. That's
Yeah,
amazing because that's
it
near
was
and dear to me.
awesome. Yeah, I mean, it was such a fun discussion, and it really just like sent me down this rabbit hole because there is so much history to the Atlantis myth and all the different ways people have interpreted it. And it's I think a really great example of how we can use myth and history to inspire new things.
Yeah, and that's fantastic, and I'm just so happy that's something that sprung from our
Mhm.
chat. I said at the beginning of this conversation that I think that your book is one of the most consequential books out there in the indie space, An Author's Guide to Setting Design, and I say that because it is going to serve so many future generations of indie authors potentially, who, especially if you don't come with a background in cartography, a background in history, a background in all of these disciplines that are incorporated in your book, but you want to write fantasy, you think it's cool, you want to write fantasy, you want the realism in your fantasy novel, and you're not quite sure where to start. Yeah, you can Google certain things and look up certain things, but especially if you don't have a background. I mean, people come with various life experience into being an author. Some people have a background in all things equestrian, so they know horses, so they're not worried about how to incorporate horses in their fantasy, but they
Mhm.
may not. They want to do something like you said, something cyberpunk, and they may not know about. They want to have like horses in space, right? Well, there's elements that they may need to research. That again, books like yours might be able to provide them, right? People want to know. Okay, well, I want to have a big natural disaster in my fantasy, and like you said, they want to understand tectonic plates. Well, great place to start. I want to know about how the seasons affect not just combat but things like the economy, right? You talk a lot. You talk about the economic aspects of worlds
Mhm.
in your books. A city building versus rural environments. Like there's so many things that I think your book adds so much value to the space in terms of like I'm not sure how to incorporate this or if I'm on the right track or if what I'm saying is authentic. Like your book can be that reference material, right? And especially when it comes to maps, because we all listen. I feel like fantasy maps are like they're almost become a must in fantasy books. Watching where the characters go, seeing their journey. When you talk, characters typically move through these vast worlds and be able to track their journey. I think a lot of readers do. I think is critical to have a map that can really bring that to life, bring that experience to life. And you talked about Tolkien. I think Tolkien was the first fantasy map in Lord of the Rings that I ever uh, saw. And after that, I think I was obsessed with every book. If it didn't have a map, I was like, oh, I automatically gave it a mini downgrade until I started
Yeah.
going further, right? And then beyond maps, it became. I mean, Tolkien, of course, had whole glossaries, very rich glossaries with family trees and histories and of names and places and that became the gold standard for me for fantasy. So seeing those things became like, I mean, if you didn't have that, then something was missing for me in your fantasy.
Mhm.
As good as the book was, it needed to have those companion aspects to reference to make the book. So for me, any really great big fantasy series, Wheel of Time, Lord of the Rings, January's Wars of Light and Shadow, any of the Realm of the Elderlings, when you name your series, they needed to have those things. So
Yeah, I mean, Tolkien was not the first to do it, but definitely I think was the person to popularize it. And I think with good reason, like you don't need a map in your book, but especially with, long series or adventures where people are traveling a lot, they can be very helpful. Even in my fantasy book where people are mostly just staying in one small town, um, it helps to orient people like, okay, I'm at this location in the town, or I'm moving over to this one. I think there's only like four labels on my map for that, but that's like all I needed. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess I'm also not the best example though. Like I'm a little bit self-indulgent because I can just make my own. So it's not as big of a deal for me. But yeah, no, I think I agree. And in a lot of ways, the book the title of this book, An Author's Guide to Setting Design, World Building and Cartography is the full title. That is very purposeful, because it is not a book about map design. It is not a book solely about cartography. It is not making the case that you need to have a map. It's more through the context of maps. What can we learn about storytelling? And a good two-thirds of the book is just talking about those aspects of earth science and history and the things that live in the world. I think there's a really interesting conversation to be had, which I don't see. I don't know if I've ever seen in this context, at least, um, about the way our maps can dictate what lives there. Like, you know, biogeography is kind of the big study of this, of how plants and animals move across the continents and sort of where those borders are. So, for example, there's a big border in North Africa with the Sahara, where it's really hard for plants and animals to naturally cross that, and so you have this entirely different ecosystem in the Afrotropics and a totally separate, different ecosystem in the Arctic area, that in like Europe and Asia and all this. All of which is to say, like, if on your map you have these very clear divides, either oceans or deserts or mountain ranges or whatever it is that is very difficult to cross, it should look different in your story. You don't need a map to communicate that. You just, in the prose, can say our character is in this environment A, which has these mix of creatures and cultures and all these different things. And as they transition into environment B, that would all look different. So I've tried to be very open about, like, you know, you don't have to have a map. There are exceptions to the rules. This is really, I sometimes describe this book as like me having an excuse to rant and go down rabbit holes and just explore a whole bunch of different related topics, and tell you what I found. And that is sometimes like that biogeography discussion. Sometimes it is a very literal, like, map discussion. Sometimes it's like me sharing this information that I found about how the Mulu shell used to be a form of currency in what is today Latin America and South America, uh, which is just like, it's one of those things I don't think people think about a lot, of like, what was the form of currency before we had like printed dollar bills and minted coins and stuff. I was like, oh, well, there's a lot of these shells laying around. Um, so, and then that becomes like a fun world building note. That becomes a unique thing that you can have about your setting, which separates it from your Game of Thrones and your other indie authors and whatever it is.
yeah, and I think for me that was the key, Adam. The fact that an author's guide to a setting design, it is all for me as a fantasy author who really cares about world building. It was something that was going to help for for myself and other authors, improve the world building in the story, right? Because so much of it, what you talk about, is about things like magic, things like different cultures, things like the stuff that's the bones of good world building. And yes, maps and map making and map design, I think, again, we talked about it, it can be really added value. And yes, your book doesn't have to have it, your epic fantasy series doesn't have to have it, but I'm telling you though that a lot of fantasy readers look for that,
Mhm.
and judge and evaluate your series. Like, a lot of people, if your book's on the shelf, on Amazon, and you're doing page reads or whatever, they're gonna flip through to see if one of the first things you have is a map or a
Yep.
family tree or a character list, right? And if you
Yep.
don't, and it's a big chunker, I'm like, like that might be hard if I get lost and I don't know where things are. And so, I mean, but I think overall, like I said, that the book you've written is going to be extremely consequential and impactful for generations of perspective fantasy authors who are new to the game. They want a reference guide. There's so few reference guides,
Mhm.
for like to help provide a roadmap of how to authenticate your world building. And I think yours it's absolutely critical, crucial. It's going to be, yeah. I can't say enough about what a great job you did and how important I think it's going to be.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, that's part of why I wanted to write it because there's a good number of, and I think they're very good as well. There's a good number of how to draw books where it's like they'll teach you how to draw your map, they'll teach you how to draw mountains pretty easily and stuff like that. And those are great if that's what you're looking to do. But not everybody aspires to draw their own maps. A lot of people don't have time for it or just want to focus on the storytelling or whatever it is, and that was kind of the hope with this was, there is a whole section about that which you can read if you want, and if you aren't interested you can skip it. The rest of it will still have value for you. You will still be learning about uh, the natural world and the people who have lived in it. You will still be seeing how authors have interpreted that in different ways. Again, that's why I brought people like yourself on board to talk about your stories and to talk about your maps. Because, I'm just one person and I've only had the examples that I've seen. There are other people who bring up examples from their own stories or from stories they've read. It was funny actually. I brought in JL Odom's map. They were kind enough to let me use the map of Moro from their series, and I used it as an example in one section toward the end, and then later on, I reached out to Tim Hicks and Hello Future Me, and he was also kind enough to answer a couple of quick questions, and he and I talked a little bit about like the world building of art and culture in a place and how like the environment could affect that. And he actually brought up her book as an example in his response of like a really great usage of food and culture in a scene to sort of like help set up what's going on, which was just like a fun little unexpected connection that I had.
That's awesome. J.L. Odom, for those of you who aren't aware, SPFBO finalist, fabulous book apparently and series by Blood by Salt. I haven't read it yet, but
Yep.
definitely on the TBR. This is the first book I think. I don't remember the name of the series, but she's really good at SPFBO and finalist, and yeah, her she's well regarded. So yeah, and those are some of the people who have contributed to this incredible endeavor that Adam's taken on in an author's guide to
Yeah,
setting design.
I really lucked out. People being extreme, like more than they should have been, extremely willing to indulge me when I just randomly showed up in their DMs or in their email, just like, "Hey, I'm doing this thing. Can I have your map and talk about it with you?"
Well, I think that's also a credit to the kind of person you are. People trust you. They know it's for great. It's something for a great cause. It's for people are more than willing to talk to you to help any way possible because the kind of person you are. and the reputation you have as a wonderful member of the community, but also too because it's a chance to be part of something really special, right? It's a really special project, right? Like,
Yeah, it's very unique. I part of the reason I say I was so fortunate is because a lot of these people I'd never spoken to before this. We maybe had seen each other in the same circles or something, but I'd never had a reason to like reach out. So very much so, I used this as like an excuse to talk to people who I wanted to talk to, and it just sort of worked out. I mean, like I said, I was able to get Brandon Sanderson's nap designer, Isaac Stewart, and that took a long time. The guy is super busy, but he gave me like several pages of responses to questions that I sent him, and I was able to like work those into different places in the book, and I'm very fortunate, and that was one of the more in depth discussions that I had with somebody. Others. Sometimes it was just like I have time for one or two questions, and so that's what I'd send. So it was very very different for each person. Some didn't even have maps. Like I actually reached out to Amber Toro because, and this was after she had released Umbra, her sci-fi romance thing, and she had a couple of interesting things going on there that I wanted to talk with her about. She doesn't have any maps, but what she does have are like sentient spaceships that grow over time. So like you can very quickly theorize a map of this would change maybe with every book or like at different points in the story as this mechanical being grows. Also, just like the environment of a natural world is so much different than the space stations her stories are set in. And so, like, what were some of the things that she had to consider when writing a story set on this, like, research space station and things like that? And her stories, of course, have, like, they're not all set there, but Umbra significantly has a lot of time there. And everybody else I've been talking to is like, yeah, this is an alternate Earth, or this is a fantasy world or something. She was one of the few people I knew at the time who was doing something entirely set in space, almost entirely set in space. So yeah, just like really trying to bring in a lot of diverse people and points of view and stories, and trying to like give people the tools to make their own decisions and see a lot of ways things can be done. There's a lot of points in the book. For example, with like rivers is one of them, that there's a very clear like rule set for how rivers typically work and how we kind of expect them to work. And then I immediately undercut all of that information by telling people about the rivers in Antarctica, which are under so much pressure from the ice that they flow uphill. And there's a river in there's a geothermal river in South America. I forget what it's called right now, but it is like 100 plus degrees Fahrenheit, which I think is like 30 plus Celsius. So like, challenging our notion of like this fresh, cooling water, like, no, this is boiling. And yeah, just like there are so many ways. Oh, and like river, like the classic adage in world building is, don't split your rivers don't split. It's like, well, yeah, typically they don't, but sometimes they do. River deltas are a thing. That's just a river being split apart into many different different passages. And with so many things like that, there's an exception to the rule. And of course, if you mix in magic or like advanced technology, nothing matters and you can just do what you want. You just have to convince the reader that that makes sense.
Yeah, and I would say with fantasy and science fiction, obviously there's always going to be some element of suspending belief. Yes, authenticity and realism I think is important. And if you write a secondary world, you want it, or a futuristic world, you want it to have some of the same rules and reflect things that are grounded in reality that are going to make your book seem authentic. But again, when it's make believe, there's certain things you can just make up, and like you said, if you can convince the reader,
yeah,
that it
it's
works.
The only person you have to convince. If the reader is convinced that all of this is real and matters and is a part of a coherent world, and you're good.
Also, want to give a quick shout out to the awesome Shad. Come by, Shad. Thanks so much for coming by, my friends, to check it out. Shad is a wonderful member of the community, always supporting authors and all things bookish. I've had the privilege of meeting Shad in person. Hope to see him again at London Comic Con. Shad, if you're coming this year, I'll be there in September, so hope to see you then if you're there. I then definitely plan to have Shad on the channel as a future part of a community appreciation Six
Awesome.
Elementals, because I already have one of those. But yeah, because the featuring authors and bloggers and editors and all these more people in the community is really important. But it's the readers that make this community their lifeblood. So and we need to acknowledge them as well. And Shad is one of those great people that's also supported. So thank you, Shad, for all you do.
Yeah, thank you for stopping by.
So, and thanks for stopping by. So I think mainly what I got out of you and all you doing this space is that you are having a blast, that you are trying new things, that you're part of things that are meaningful and wonderful, that you're also setting some trends and going places where that perhaps haven't been gone before, and that's all good, man. But what and I know, like you said, you don't necessarily know, and it's a good thing what's around the corner. But what are some of the future projects and things that you've touched a bit about them? What are some of the things that you think that you might be doing in the future that you might not be able to give away all the secrets here? But what are some of the areas you want to delve into? What are some of the things, book kinds of books you want to write that you might be aware of? Like what's next, or continuing with series, or what's next for Adam Bassett?
Yeah, I think I want to continue both of the series that I'm working on. Like I said, I have the next book in Copper and Ash in the works. I have some notes for something that may come after that. I I haven't fully put all that together yet, but book 2 is very much on track to come out probably sometime next year. And we'll see what happens after that. I do also really want to get back to the Cyberpunk series. I haven't been able to work on that very much for a while. And while book 2 has been with the editor, I had time to write down a couple of notes and explore some thoughts. I don't think it's quite ready yet, but there is a book or two that I am very interested in exploring in that cyberpunk world. It's just a matter of like figuring out the best way to approach it. Um, I haven't quite gotten there yet, but I would like to be working on that at some point this year or next. I Beyond that, I'm not too sure, but definitely like continue with both of those for now. At some point, I would love to come back to that story I set aside. I mentioned earlier the fantasy book that just I couldn't quite get figured out before I started working on Digital Extremities. I have some really cool art that I got for it back when I was working on it, just like character art and stuff. And there are some things about it that I'm still very proud of all these years later, which tells me like there's still something there. I maybe didn't fully figure it out at the time, but I think if I come back to it, I maybe can. But I think I want to work on the other series a little bit more. Uh, with Copper and Ash, I think I want to conclude that before I move on to any new series. And then we'll see.
Okay. Well, sounds exciting. All great stuff. Can't wait to see where you take things next. You're doing so many fabulous things in this space, Adam. So I want to say congratulations on all that. Special congratulations on An Author's Guide to Setting Design. Can you tell the readers a bit about, so just to confirm, it's June 30th for ebooks and hardcovers.
Yes.
Can you?
Yeah, I should have mentioned this sooner. Tuesday, June 30th is the ebook release that is available everywhere you get your ebooks. If you want to support an indie bookstore, You can also get the ebooks from Lunar Books. That's lunarbooks.au. They're an Australian group, but they distribute the ebooks everywhere. They're fantastic. They've been helping me out with this for a little while. And if you're in Australia or New Zealand, they also do delivery to you for physical books. The physical book of An Author's Guide to Setting Design is not ready yet. It's a full color hardcover, and there's 130 images in the book. So there's a lot of things that have to kind of get figured out. I'm working with a group to try and get it all done. I'm hoping to have it out before autumn is over. I did a Kickstarter for this a while ago, so all the Kickstarter backers will get it, and then it'll be available generally. Follow my socials, my newsletter. I will share when that is available once it is. I don't have a date to give right now. I'm just kind of I'm with all of you, kind of just like waiting for it to be done. And then once I have the final manuscript layout, I'll be able to finalize everything and make sure everything prints correctly, and we'll be all good to go. I'm hoping to bring some copies to Dragonsteel when I go this year, so I need it done by then. I've just sent a message to the folks who are helping me out, like, "Hey, now we have a deadline."
Okay, well that's awesome. Well, and also of course, wishing you all the best at Dragonsteel. I can say from having been to quite a few ones now, it is one of the best experiences you ever. And to meet all these, like you said, that you've been friends with on social media for years, perhaps, and you haven't seen them. Like, I mean, my first experience with that was in Glasgow at Worldcon, and wow, to me,
Glasgow looked like so much fun. I was so jealous.
Yeah, and then of course Seattle. Last year I won't be in LA this year, but I will be, God willing, in Montreal next year.
I'm hoping to do that as well. I'm actually about 50-ish minutes from Montreal, just like where I live.
That's awesome. Yeah, you're upstate New York.
So,
right?
I'm currently based in Vermont.
Oh, you're okay. Yes.
Now, I don't know if I'll be here when Worldcon happens. My whole work career has gone through quite a lot recently. I don't need to get into all that, but yeah, I don't know if I'll be living here then. So if I am, I'm hoping to attend. If I'm not, I'd love to attend as well, but it might be more difficult if I have to move for work or something. So we'll see.
It'd be great to meet in person if that happens, and
yeah, I'd love that.
It'd be wonderful. And so you're getting, like I said, you meet so many great people at Dragonsteel. So kudos to you for that, and I'm so happy for you. Hope you have a blast. You really enjoy yourself.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of small events, and they've all been fantastic. This would be the first time that it's like an event that big as an author, and also just like you said, people are gathering for this, like from the circles that I'm already in. I haven't had that experience yet, really, as since I started publishing work. It's been a lot of meeting new people, not meeting people I know for the first time. So it'll be fun.
I think it's gonna be awesome. Just have fun with that. Have a blast. As we wind down, do you also mind telling people where they can find and follow you on social media, where they can get your other books in your series, etc.?
You can find me at adamcbassett.com. That's my map portfolio. It's my book information. It's all kinds of stuff. And you can, through there is probably the easiest way to find me if you're looking for all my socials. But I am generally Adam C. Bassett on Instagram, Threads, and adamcbassett.com on Bluesky. Those are the main ones that I use, the first two mostly, but I'll pop on Bluesky every now and then as well. So yeah, I mean, but like the algorithms, you might not see my stuff even if you follow. So definitely, if you want to hear about the hardcover version of this book or what I've got coming out next, the newsletter is the most reliable way for you to hear from me.
Fantastic. And just to confirm, that for you, you're still very much providing. You have clients that seeking design. So just
Yeah,
all the people out there.
I'm actually working on 2 different commissions right now. And those are actually probably going to be wrapping up fairly soon, sometime next month. So I have availability if anybody is interested in working with me on your map. Would love to hear about your story and help you bring that to life. Like I said, my portfolio is on my website, adamcbassett.com. And you can go see stuff that I've done before, clients that I've worked with before. I've worked with GJ Terrell. I've worked with small indie publisher, Alex Barker Publishing, all kinds of people, and a bunch of different styles. I do world maps, city maps, all that kind of stuff, and really like try to make it work for your story. That's the most important part.
Well, that's amazing. Well, I'm so looking forward to seeing again what you do in space. You're looking for maps. Here's another great map designer that you should check out. All the links are in the video as well. I want to thank Adam so much for his time. You've been so generous. You've been amazing. Thanks so much for joining me at Six Elementals. This has been a blast. Talk to you. Obviously, we're going to keep in touch with this in the future. I hope you do the honor of coming back on the channel in the future for various things, including there's all kinds of group discussions I have planned in the years to come that I think your contribution would be very appreciated and relevant.
Yeah,
So
I would
hopefully
love to do that.
we'll have you back quickly. The shameless self promo for me. I'm P.L. Stewart. I'm the author of the Drowned Kingdom Saga, 7-book series beginning with Drowned Kingdom. Of course, that's book 1. The most recent publication is A Black Dragon Unread that was released in 2026, just a few months ago. And book 7, the final book of the Drowned Kingdom Saga, entitled Sure Steel, is coming in early 2027. So the series is almost
Wow.
complete. So if you're looking to, I know some people have been reticent to invest, and some people have been started buying the books and series, but don't plan to read until I finish. Well, I publish a book a year, so the next one, God willing, as long as I'm breathing, it's
Yeah.
gonna come in the spring. So
At the risk of us going on too long, I'm just curious. What are you thinking about? What's next? Are you like what's after the saga?
what's next is 2 prequel trilogies, which will back in the greater universe. So the first trilogy will be set about approximately 500 years before the events of the series. The second will be a bit further forward. It's set about 300 years in the series. They're both trilogies are based on heroes of the main character in this series, and you'll find that history is not always accurate, and the characters won't be as my main character in the series envisioned them. So,
Yeah.
and then following that, I plan to 7-book series to wrap up the Drowned Kingdom saga, with the exception of several planned novellas to come. So approximately 30-ish books, 30 to 40 books in the series is what
Dang, dude.
I'm planning.
That's
So
that's crazy.
yeah, so hopefully that, God willing, and if I can write that long, that will take me into to the end of my writing career, and hopefully my late 70s or late 80s, if everything well. So that's the plan. That's a long-term plan.
That's wild. That's so
So,
cool how in depth you're going with this.
well, thank you, thank you. I spent a lot of time creating this world, and I'd like
Mhm.
to hang out in it for a while, the rest of my writing career, essentially. So, also have a short story, Connect to My World, and Shapers World, an awesome Shapers of World anthology. Check that out, with some great authors such as M.J. Kuhn, etc. My short story entitled Forest Dark is about in the middle, but read it for all the great books in there. But my Forest Dark story is very much connected to my John Keating universe. Could be a bit of a spoiler, potentially. Some people might see it that way, but if you read it somewhere around, in and around after Lord and King, or at the latest after A Black Dragon Red, it'll certainly, I think, provide you some with some. It's something that will add value, I think, to your reading experience of the series. So, finally, so plstore.com's books, and Stewart writes his most of social media handles: Instagram, Twitter/X, Bluesky, and Facebook. And then I'm also an assistant editor Before We Go blog. Shout out to the wonderful Beth Tabler and all Before We Go blog crew. And then shout out to Adrian Gibson and Beth Tabler and all the and Adrian M. Gibson and our Adrian at Grimdark, Adrian Collins at Grimdark Magazine, and all the Grimdark Magazine peeps who are incredible. So finally, I'm very blessed to do the page chewing interview feature with my colleague Taylor from YouTube Pages. Another great book to check out her channel as well. Check out Adam Bassett. Check out everything he writes. Check out Author's Guide to Things That, again, something that's going to change the game as a reference book for people writing fantasy and science fiction. Any of you aspiring authors out there, that's just the kind of book you need before you complete your first book. So you want to learn about maps, and also check out Adam if you're looking for someone to design your maps. There's someone who knows what they're doing that can help you and collaborate with you on that end. So once again, my friend, thank you so much for coming out. Adam and I are signing up from Six Elementals, and we will